Hello everyone, so this is a quick demo video on exercise 2 and 3. So this video is for those of you who weren't here on the second class. So in this exercise we're going to quickly go over some of the last week's material and also the materials for the exercise 3. So the exercise last week was to erase out this background and then so that we can Photoshop that person into this background. So let's get right in. The objective was to erase this background here, and whenever I'm using so we had to erase all this background and then just have this person remain so that we can Photoshop her into the background, the desert layer right here. But whenever I'm working with erasing background, I like to have some kind of a solid color behind it. So I'm just gonna make a new layer right here. And then I'm gonna use the paint bucket tool, and then I'm gonna give it like a really distinctive color, either like bright red or neon green, something that you can see very well. So in this case I think the neon green is going to work very well. So I'm gonna fill this layer 1 here, and if you do that you'll see where you are erasing. So I'm gonna go back to the person layer here, and I'm gonna zoom in. And I'm gonna use the eraser tool to just kind of cut this out. So I'm gonna hold down the shift and just start click here and there to just start cutting this person out. So I'm just gonna do that really quickly. I'm not gonna spend too much time trying to be really precise because we're gonna be erasing out most of the border anyway. So for the sake of this demo, I'm just gonna go quite quickly like this. Alright, once you cut that out, I'm just gonna use the bigger eraser tool to just kind of erase everything out. Okay, so now all the erasers are gone, the backgrounds are gone, and I'm just gonna delete this layer, and now we'll see that we have this we were able to get rid of the background. So right now when we take a look at this photo, it doesn't look very convincing because the exposure is different, meaning that the brightness and also the contrast is a little bit off. So we kind of can tell that this photo is photoshopped. So we're gonna use the technical adjustments to make this picture a little bit more believable. So first thing first, we want to crop this out. So to crop this out, we're gonna come here, and well, I'm gonna clear that. So make sure that nothing is in here, otherwise it's gonna try to maintain the ratio. But I'm just gonna use these handles to crop this to this picture and just hit enter, and voila. And now here we're gonna give it a adjustment to this person layer so that it looks more believable, and we're gonna make it either brighter, and then we're gonna tinker with the contrast as well to make this photo a little bit more convincing. So there's 2 types of adjustments in Photoshop. So there's one called destructive and there's one in non-destructive. So both of them are a very different approach, and they both have advantages and disadvantages. So advantage of destructive editing is very easy. It's very fast and very intuitive. What I mean by destructive editing adjustment is that the photo like this is made of small dots called pixels, if you take a look at this. So this little square right here represent pixel. So destructive editing method physically, well, not physically, but changes the property, the color of this pixel to give it an adjustment, whereas non-destructive editing method gives it like a computer generated code to make it appear differently than the original property of a pixel. So we'll be able to easily go back and forth to original and then the final adjustments. So let's take a look at the examples of both of them. So destructive method. First, I'm just gonna duplicate this person layer because I wanna do the both. So first, let's take a look at the destructive method. So destructive adjustment, what you want to do is, first thing first, let's take a look at and see if this is too bright. So let's go to the image and let's go to adjustment. So there are a lot of options when it comes to adjustments, but things that I only use a couple of them here. I like brightness, contrast, and levels, and exposure, and hue, those, and color balance. Those are things that I use mostly. But when I want to do a little bit of a more of a fine tuning, I start to use different things. But those are the main things that I use. So I'm just gonna go over those things. So first things first, let's play around with the brightness and contrast and see what we can do. So if you click that, this little pop-up gets prompted, and then as you move it around, you'll see that you can make the photo brighter or darker. So in this case, she is facing against this really strong light, so we're gonna make it a little bit darker like that. But at the same time, since she has such a strong light source behind, the contrast is going to be a little bit stronger. So I'm gonna crank up this contrast a little bit like that, and maybe too much, a little bit more subtle, and hit OK. So when we do that, we change the properties of each pixels to make this layer look darker. Whereas in non-destructive editing method, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and you'll see that there's a little circle with the half circle right here. If you click that and then hit brightness and contrast, here you're going to see the same adjustment pop up right over here. So we're going to do the same thing here, and we're going to crank up the contrast, but you'll notice that entire picture gets edited. So we only want to apply this adjustment layer to the person layer right here. So to do that, we're going to click this guy right here. And once you do that, this little thing gets prompt, and only this layer is going to be affected. Whereas if I bring it down here, it's only going to affect the desert layer, a layer that is one directly underneath it. So if we do that, so this is the non-destructive editing method, we can easily just hide and unhide this. Oh, what is going on? This layer to quickly go back to the original to edit it. So this is the power of non-destructive editing method. But you'll notice that once we do that, we're gonna start adding a lot of layers in here and there. So this advantage of non-destructive editing method is that your layer panels gets really complicated, and then your image file is going to get really bloated with different layers and adjustments. So time to time, what I like to do, non-destructive method is mistake proof, because you can always go back and change whatever you want. But time to time, when I'm certain that when I feel confident about the adjustment that I make, I like to just merge down the adjustment layers, and so that I just apply the permanent destructive editing to the layer, because I'm confident that this is something that I'm going to keep to the final edits, just to kind of clean up the layer panel here, and also make my file a little bit cleaner. So that is another practice that you can do. So let's take a look at different types of the editing that you can do. So let's go back to the destructive editing method. So we're at the person layer. And here we can also go to image adjustment, and you can play around with the let's play around with the color balance. So color balance is very useful, because I'm not sure you guys are familiar with the color theory. By changing the color balance, you can change the mood, the feeling of the photograph. So if I increase the blue, you'll notice that the picture gets a little bit cooler. Well, actually, I'm gonna apply that to the desert layer, color balance. So then you'll notice that the change of the color here. So if I put that up, and by doing so, this is kind of applying like a filter, like you see in the like Snapchat and Instagram. But you can see that you are effectively changing the entire mood of the photograph by changing the color balance. So in this case, how about we change it a little bit more bluish to have a little bit more neutral feeling to it, because the background right now is very orange. So let's go to color balance, and then I'm gonna crank up the blue a little bit. But if I crank up the blue a little bit, you'll notice that a lot of things gets really purple. So to compensate that, we're gonna increase the green value a little bit, and also I'm gonna keep it a little bit more cyan, and let's take a look. So this is the end result, and this was original. So by doing so, we can effectively change the entire kind of a feeling of the background. So that was the destructive editing method that I applied to the desert layer right here. So I like this color, so I'm confident that I'm going to keep this adjustment throughout the end of the final edit of this photograph. So I'm just gonna use the destructive editing method, but I can also add a non-destructive editing method here. But we wanna apply this color balance adjustment to both desert and human figure. So I'm not going to click this guy right here. I'm not going to click this because I want this color balance to apply to all of the layers. So if I don't click this, you'll notice that it is affecting entire layers. So I'm going to crank up the blue a little bit here, and then cyan a little bit to kind of. So let's take a look. If we do that, you'll notice that we can change the feeling of the photograph by adjusting the color balance. Another adjustment that we're gonna take a look is called a hue and saturation. This is something that you can play around with if you wanna be a little bit more creative. So by changing the color and hue, by changing the hue, you can make her appear like a Shrek, or you can make her appear really purplish, things like that. So this is very useful when you're working with like a lot of graphic design, solid color graphic design. But in this case, we're dealing with like a natural things, so it doesn't really, it's not going to be very helpful. But time to time, just adjusting a little bit of a color hue, you can create really interesting effects. So if I increase a little bit, everything gets really kind of a yellow and blue. So this is another example of changing the mood of the emotional response of the viewers of this photograph. But I'm not going to mess around with that. So and another thing is saturation. So if you increase the saturation, you'll notice that the colors gets really punchy. Whereas if you lower the saturation, colors get dull like this. So I use this a lot to quickly make the photo black and white just by lowering all the way down, and you'll notice that all the colors get converted into black and white because saturation is -100. And also by taking out some of the color, you can make the photograph a little bit appear more cinematic, because a lot of cinematic cameras take the photos and videos very in a neutral and I'll say a little bit dull color. But phone cameras have like a really high contrast and saturation, whereas the cinematic cameras have a little bit of a less of that. So you can also create that kind of effect. So here I'm also not selecting this because I want this adjustment applied to all of the layers, and I did this in the non-destructive editing method because I am not too sure about these color balance and hue saturation. I might want to change later on, so that's why I use this two non-destructive editing method. So alrighty, so let's take a look. Alright, so here we are going to now use the tools to make her appear a little bit more believable. So we are going to use tools called dodge and burn tool. So dodge tool, as you can see over here, that's a cute doggy by the way. You can use this to make a certain area appear brighter. So in this case, she is against this really strong light. So I'm gonna apply here, and you'll notice that whenever I click and drag, the area gets brighter. So in this case, if I do here, you'll notice that her eyes gets brighter. So, but so since she are facing this really strong backlight, I'm gonna make the edge of her face a little bit brighter to make it appear that she is behind this really strong sunlight. Her shoulder line also gets really bright because of that strong sunlight. And just on the edge. Here as well. So you can also change the strength of the each stroke by playing around the exposure. Right now I'm using 50, but you can also lower it down to if you want to make it a little bit more fine adjustment, but in this case I think 50 will work nicely, so I'm just gonna stick with the 50. And I'm gonna make her jean a little bit up here as well. I'm holding down the shift to create this really straight line here as well. So just by doing so, she appears to be in front of this really strong light. Gonna play around a little bit here and there. So this is very much like a painting as well. To be really, excuse me, to be really good at the Photoshop, you also have a need very strong training in painting as well, because it's pretty much just painting over the original content, which is in this case, which is this photograph. So I'm just gonna make her hair a bit brighter like this, and also here a little bit brighter, and her shoulder there. Motorcycle, it could use really strong highlights. Right. So just by doing so, just by highlighting the edge of her hair and the face and here and there, we can make this photo a lot more convincing. Another method that I like to do is just kind of a blending in the edge of her of the figure to the background. So I'm gonna go to the eraser, but here I'm gonna lower the opacity to say 17%, and I'm gonna use the soft brush and just kind of erase out just a little bit of her edge of her the figure, just to make it blend in a little bit better. It's just blurring effect, because if you have experience with taking photographs, if you have some really strong light source behind, you'll see this kind of effect happening of this double exposure kind of effect. Just erasing out just a little bit of the this foreground figure, which is in this case this person. You can oh, that's too much. You can blend in the photo a lot better. Gonna make her face just a tad brighter here. I'm not sure that's the that made it better, but just by doing so, when you just take a look at her face area right here, now it is a lot more convincing than before, I'll say. So this was original, and this was after. And this is original. So I say they work nicely. So this is the power of dodge and burn tool. So another tool that we're going to take a look is burn tool. So opposite to the dodge tool, wherever I click, it's going to make area darker. But I found that it doesn't really work very well with the skin tone because it makes everything a little bit blackish. So when I'm working with the human figures, I don't like to use the dodge tool that much. But it works well on objects. So for instance, I can just make this part a little bit darker like that, just to kind of indicate that really strong light source. So, but on the skin tone, it doesn't really work well. Let's lower the exposure a little bit so that I'm applying only slight amount of burn here. But even the slight amount of burn, it make everything really charcoal kind of color to it. So I think it's very useful tool when it comes to skin tone. Alright, so that is dodge and burn tool to make, and we use that to make this photograph a little bit more convincing. Alright, so what if let's go back to the adjustment layer. So what if we want to make her appear, to make her look like a Shrek? So we're gonna add a hue and saturation tool, and we're gonna select this guy so that this hue and saturation adjustment layer is only applying her, and we're gonna change the hue so that her face is green, like that. But if we do that, we'll notice that her entire layer gets gets affected, but we only want to select her face and her skin. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the thing called masking layer. So if you notice right over here, all these adjustment layers have this white rectangle here. So that is the masking layer. So what this does is that if you select that and then go to the brush tool, I'll make the brush look like that. And anywhere you paint it with the black, it is going to erase out the effect that is being applied by this adjustment layer. Whereas if I change to, by the way, to switch this tool around, you just click it right here. If I paint anywhere with white, it is going to apply the adjustment layer here. So what if I have a black layer? What if I fill the entire masking layer with black? No adjustment is going to be applied. And then what if I paint somewhere with the white brush? Well, if I do that, it is going to apply this adjustment layer right here, which is the hue and saturation. So by using this masking layer, we can just select certain area that we want to apply the effect to it. So we only want to apply the hue saturation effect to her skin. So we can just kind of paint the area white, paint the area that we want to apply this hue saturation effect by this brush tool, and make her appear green like this. So that is the power of masking layer. So this applies to everything. I'm just gonna delete that because it looks weird. So let's take a look at color balance. So if I toggle this, you'll notice the difference of the color balance. But what if I want to make her just this area a little bit more orange? We can do that by erasing out this color balance effect around her. but here I'm gonna use a soft brush, because if I use the hard brush, you'll notice this clear edge between where I'm erasing. So I'm gonna use the soft brush to kind of bring back that orange look to the figure, just around the figure, not the entire thing. Do that in one stroke so that we can take a look at before and after. So if I do that, you notice that our figure, it has a more orange and warm color to it, but and this is before and this is after. And you'll notice that this area has been painted black, and the area that has been painted black is not having this color balance effect to it. Alright, so that is the masking layer. So this masking layer is going to be very useful if you want to do like a really fine tuning on your photograph. And even if you when you're working with a lot of graphic design as well, masking tool is very useful to either just applying adjustment to certain area or selecting certain area. Masking becomes very useful. So I want you to try this at home if you can run the Photoshop at your computer. If not, we're gonna use this. You're gonna have some time on Tuesday to work on this, so that you can kind of see what these adjustment layers and the different type of adjustment method can be used. So if you have any questions, send me a text or email, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday.